On this episode of the Pigskin Cafe, we've got some SEC matchups that we've got to cover.
Welcome to the Pigskin Cafe, a podcast where Hampton, Chase, and Graham break down all things college football. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
They have to win this game.
There's a problem.
This one's tough.
We are back.
That's what my guts tell me.
I genuinely could not believe
You
it.
don't live in the great state of Texas.
All right, big boy. Hold my sweet tea.
What are we doing?
That is a stat there, ladies and gentlemen.
One, hey, thanks for listening to this episode, and hopefully you've already listened to the one earlier this week where we broke down the Alabama and Wisconsin game, and we've got several SEC matchups that we've got to cover right now, Hampton. So, if you didn't catch that last episode, just want to quickly just highlight a little change in format, which I think is beneficial to you, the listener, which is that we're gonna actually do two podcasts each week. One more focusing on the Alabama game, and then one focusing a little bit more on just the games that we watched or that are important to college football that we caught. So you'll feel that, you'll see that, hopefully trimming down the episodes, and also just to give you two episodes each week. And we think that that'll benefit you, the listener, and it'll probably help a little bit with just the flow of as you're listening, good starting points, good ending points. And the only other thing is just we're going to maybe form this a little bit more around reacting to some games that happened this past week rather than trying to project the future. We think that some of our best content is whenever we're reacting to some actual data, some what we've actually seen. And we'll just leave the forecasting to some other people that are great in the industry that I don't think we're going to be able to
meteorologists who are always wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Some people made a living out of shooting stuff in the dark. So, anyways, we'll move into what we do know and what we can see. And Hampton, I want to get us start off right here at the University of South Carolina. They host LSU, and man, this was the week I would say that you thought several big teams were going to go down. And so it usually happens about this time, and it's not that the teams are bad. It's just like this is the first time they're really tested, and you also just don't really know who each side really has. And so, they go into South Carolina, and LSU squeaks out the win. How'd you feel about it? What were some things that you saw that caught your eye leading to South Carolina almost finishing the job?
This might have been the game of the day, and I hate that it was played at 11 o'clock. This should have been a primetime game. This is the only thing I don't like about them releasing times now way before the season starts, because you have matchups that should be in primetime that you got at 11 o'clock. But I digress. Fantastic football game. This game was all kinds of drunk on bourbon or sweet tea, whatever your beverage of choice is. And, man, South Carolina should have won this game. They were up big early. I think they got out to a 21-0 lead or 17-0 lead at one point. And what really changed the game was Lenora Sellers got hurt. I'm going to give a few takeaways on the game, but that, to me, that's my biggest takeaway overall. I came away way more impressed with South Carolina than I did LSU. I thought South Carolina acquitted themselves very well, and I think that game doesn't come down to the final seconds if Sellers doesn't get hurt right before halftime. And not that he was just incredible through the air, but he has a dynamic on the ground that Robbie Ashford just doesn't, and he's also just a better passer than Robbie Ashford. So LSU had to respect that, and that led to a big day on the ground for Rocket Sanders, who had, I think, 19 carries for like 143 yards and a touchdown. Norris broke off a 75-yard touchdown. That was huge for them. Their defense kind of hung in there, but I think they got worn down in the second half because they couldn't sustain a drive with Ashford there at quarterback because, again, passing is not his strong suit, and their offensive playbook is very limited when he is in the game. So I feel better about them going forward with Sellers as their quarterback. I feel like they kind of figured themselves out a little bit. Their defense, even though I think at the end they kind of wore down, their tackling at times was pretty bad. But they held down LSU to begin with, and that's a really good offense. Say what you want about LSU. but Nussmeier and Lacey, and then that freshman running back Caden Durham, who had a really good day. I mean, they couldn't tackle him all afternoon long. I mean, they kind of held them in check until they kind of eventually got worn down. And gritty win by LSU. I mean, to come back all the way from that type of deficit on the road in a hostile environment, that is impressive. But I don't watch this team and say, man, this team's markedly different from last year, because to me, it's the same thing. Good offense, their defense is terrible. I mean, they gave up like 240 yards on the ground to a team that isn't going to stretch the field much vertically in the passing game. And my final thought on this game is the Jason Autry-led officiating crew should never officiate another SEC game ever again. And I'm sorry, this can't happen. They had 2 game-changing calls that went against South Carolina. One on an offensive possession where they called a bogus offensive pass interference that negated like a 50-yard gain through the air. South Carolina would have had the ball in plus territory, would have been going in to score. They negated that. Then South Carolina had to punt. Then LSU throws an interception. South Carolina runs it all the way back for a touchdown, and they call an egregious, unnecessary roughness because number 5 pushed, not even Quentin Dialed, Aaron Murray style 2012 SEC championship on Garrett Nussmeier. He pushed him, and they called an unnecessary roughness that negated that entire play. And if that play had stood, South Carolina wins that game, no question, no doubt in my mind. And even with that, they still had a chance at the end, but they missed the field goal. So overall, LSU, I feel like, hasn't improved much from last year. I really think they're pretty much an identical team, but maybe even less explosive on offense. But their defense, to me, isn't much better. But South Carolina, I think, is going to be a team that they can keep their quarterback healthy. They're going to be a bear for anybody to play because of kind of some dudes that they have on that offense. They've got a unique style, a unique attack that they offer. And then they got some dudes on defense. Again, I brought him up every week. Dylan Stewart is an absolute freak. Mm-hmm. And when that dude's a sophomore, watch out college football, because that dude right now is incredible, and he's only going to keep getting better.
Dude, yeah, I'm telling you, on game day, they had him and Ryan Williams on the Heisman watch, which is crazy to think. I mean, that just speaks really highly of them, obviously. But man, it's just hard to wrap your mind around how good he is when you watch him. And have to remind me a little bit of his recruitment. Was he the 5-star out of DC that they got?
That was Nick Harbor, I think, the year prior. Dylan Stewart was like a number 1 player. I don't remember where he's from though.
Okay, I do remember when they were recruiting him, and I was like, dang, South Carolina. And dude, it's just cool when you see guys pan out and not always go to the best school that they, probably could have gone to. So, and kudos to him. I thought that they had this game, and there's nothing, dude. It's becoming something. I don't know what it is about it, but it's becoming something in my life when I see Brian Kelly trotting across the field that I'm just like, I just do not care for you very much. It's nothing personal. It's just kind of the way that I think he carries himself as a head coach. It sounds
personal.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I really wanted to see him lose that game, and
I know.
Let's call it good coaching. He didn't.
We try to call it down the middle here as much as we can, but full disclosure, everybody, I was pulling for South Carolina in that game. So yes, I was upset that LSU ended up winning that football game. And Jason Autry, I didn't come to watch you and your crew throw 25 flags. I came to watch football. Yeah. So please, for the love of everyone involved, stop. Just simply stop.
Stop. Get some help. Hey, we almost had another top team, if not the top team in college football. This is kind of these 2 matchups we're about to talk about. I mean, they're related. That South Carolina goes, they go to Kentucky, and didn't they go to Kentucky and then embarrassed them. So it's like, hey, what does environment really contribute here? And then Kentucky hosts Georgia, and hey, what does environment contribute here? They almost knock off the number 1 team in the nation, and a lot of people thought that they were going to get the job done. Let me get your reaction to Kentucky almost doing what it felt like at times. I can only relate it to those years where Alabama just needed a loss, and it was like the Pac-12, that game that starts at 11 p.m. It feels like, and all of a sudden, Stanford comes out of nowhere and beats, I don't know, Oregon, and then Alabama gets in. It felt like, holy crap! I think that Kentucky's about to knock off Georgia. And this is the beginning to a wild college football season, which that obviously does not happen. But let me get your thoughts. This was a surprising game. I think everyone was taken completely off guard. That Kentucky was even close in this game. So give me your reaction to this.
Yeah, no one had this on their bingo card that Kentucky was going to lose by 1 point to Georgia. Yeah. This very much reminds me, and Kirby even said it in the post-game presser, of the game they had, I believe it was in 2022. They went to Missouri, and they were losing to Missouri the whole game, and they came back and won. This game was very reminiscent, but even more ugly than that game. Their offense just couldn't get anything going. I mean, Carson Beck, I think he only threw for little less. Yeah, he threw for 160 yards. They didn't run the ball very well. I mean, they averaged 3.4 yards per carry. And I think that in and of itself is an issue. I don't want to overreact to this game because I fully suspect when Alabama plays Georgia in 2 weeks, that same Georgia team is not going to be the one you see against Alabama. But overall, big picture-wise, I do think there's some holes on this Georgia team that they haven't had in years past. I think they're really feeling the loss of Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey. I don't think they have any go-to playmakers yet. Not saying they won't.
And let me just add in that you lost you lost Ra Thomas at the beginning of the season too. Like that's 3 guys off the board right there that were big contributors last year. Just to add to your point, keep going.
No, and I think that's an excellent point. Dominic Lovett, hasn't really stepped up. I know they threw to Kobe Young a lot in the first game against Clemson, but they just really don't have a difference maker. And their offense, to me, you can tell they're not really great at running the football right now. Tate Ratledge goes out and he gets hurt, and so that's another guy that's down. And apparently, I want to give a shout out to my friend Landon Beeman. He put this in one of our group chats that I think Georgia now, with Tate Ratledge being out, they've got like 4 guys that don't have a ton of experience, and their 2 tackles in particular aren't the best run blockers. Like, they're pretty good pass protectors, but they're not the best run blockers. And when Georgia doesn't have a running game, their passing game suffers greatly. Even though I will say this, last year they didn't have a good running game either, honestly. They were very much a passing team. They were just very efficient, but they also had better weapons. So I think overall you can take that from this game. And then the other thing you can take from this game is that Mark Stoops loves coaching like a coward in big moments. I mean, you were within a point of beating Georgia and you punt it in their territory. Like, brother, what are we doing? Like, how are you going to sell that to the boosters? We came within 1 point of beating Georgia. Like, you have a chance to win. You have a chance to have a program-defining win, and you punt. And that, to me, in a nutshell, encompasses Mark Stoops at Kentucky and his tenure there. And I think it's a shame for their team. I think it's a shame for their fans, because a move like that, to me, enforces, though, that you don't have confidence in them when you make a move like that. Where if you went for it, even if they didn't make it, they're like, hey, our coach believes in us at least. And no one would have given him crap if he had gone for it and they had not gotten it. So that's my overall takeaway from that game. Georgia will, again, look like a different team in 2 weeks, but there are some areas that Alabama, I think, can exploit and that other teams can exploit on their schedule.
Yeah. Dude, I think that's well said. Let's keep us moving. I mean, I don't really if I have much to add to that. It was it raining last night? Did you see that?
At the Kentucky game?
Yeah.
I don't believe it was. I didn't watch the full game. I watched.
Okay. I don't know why. For some reason, I'm thinking that there was, but it felt like one of those nights where, not like it was raining, but it seemed like, again, you take everybody off guard. And for some reason, I thought it was raining, and I might just be mistaken. I don't think so, but it just had that feel to it that, you just need something like the weather to be on your side.
Yeah.
Let's shock the world. So, All right, dude, let's move on to and again, this has been a fun team to keep up with, especially here in the great state of Texas. Man, Texas A&M in their all whites go to Florida, which, man, there's a lot to talk about, and I'm kind of priming the next fan question that we'll talk about. But give me your thoughts on this game. And Hampton, I'll start you with this, just to give you a place to start. DJ Lagway has, I'm sure, a fantastic NIL deal to go to Florida in the midst of what's going on there. I think at one point you said that they were taking turns going like each series. They were, correct me if I'm wrong, but like, tell me what you start there. What did you think about their plan at the quarterback position, and then just maybe work your way out from there?
Woo! I thought it was desperate. I
Mm.
felt it was a coach grasping for straws and a coach that had no answers, because I'm all for like giving both guys a shot. I get that. But one drive in, one drive out, one drive in, one drive out is no way to handle that type of situation. I mean, neither guy could get in a rhythm. DJ Lagway looked overmatched in that game. Graham Mertz was clearly the better option in this particular game against Texas A&M that has a really good defensive line. And what is Florida's weakness? Their offensive line and their defensive line. But he was the better option, and he was the only one that really kind of led any type of productive offense for them. And when I saw them doing that, I kind of knew they were cooked. I also knew they were cooked when Marcel Reed comes in and looks like the second coming of Johnny Manziel and goes down the field on them the first drive, second drive, and Florida defense couldn't stop them. They couldn't stop their running game. They couldn't stop him through the air or with his legs. I mean, he made a play on the first drive. They're backed up like 1st and 20, 2nd and 20, and he breaks off like a 40, 50-yard run. And I was really impressed with him, to the point that I would not be shocked if Texas A&M stuck with him, because he looked much better than Wigman did against Notre Dame. Wigman has an AC joint sprain. That thing is probably going to linger for a while. And to me, not only did Marcel Reed play better, the team looked like they galvanized around him, that the team were galvanized by his play and really rallied around him. He really showed his leadership. And to me, they had a whole different dynamic. And you pair that more explosive offense with the defense that we already know for them is pretty good, they're going to be a much tougher out, to me, with him at quarterback than Weigman. So that's kind of my A&M thoughts on this game. But Florida, I know you asked about the quarterback, and I touched on that. It's bad, man. Like, it is. Not only do they look like they just don't have dudes, they look poorly coached. They don't play with a lot of intensity. Their fundamentals are lacking. I mean, A&M like just bully them up front. Just absolutely bully them up front. And at some point, I don't think now, especially considering the back half of their schedule, Billy's not going to make it through the year. And I know we're going to lead into that question here in a minute, but they called a board meeting this morning, and he just kind of looks in over his head. Everything's going wrong, wrong around him. And I get wanting to have a calm demeanor, but at some point you got to show you got to show some fire, man. Like, you got to get on these guys. You got to get on these guys, and inspire them and hold them to a standard. And that's not happening down there at Florida, or it doesn't appear to be. And I know that's tough for us to see. We're not there day in, day out in practice, but the product on the field is just simply not good enough down in Gainesville. I mean, it's bad. They have Mississippi State this upcoming weekend, who looks awful in their own right. I mean, they got blown out by Toledo. The Rockets of Toledo.
Yeah.
So they've got to win that game. I'll tell you this. Here's a bold prediction. If they lose against Mississippi State, he's out. He won't even get on the plane back to Gainesville from Starkville. He will be out of there. He'll have to drive back on an Uber or something.
Hey, best job in the country. Fired Power 5 football coach to this
Amen.
day.
Yeah.
Best gig you can get.
Mhm.
Man, let me just kind of ask, and I'll transition this right here. Let's just start with Billy Napier.
Yeah.
Um, man, all right, he's the second coach that's gone in there, and I would say has, yeah, I mean, it feels like he's getting fired.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out a way if I even want to like get you to answer that, but like we can have a little bit better content than that. I think. Maybe he shocks the world. Maybe I'm wrong.
Mhm.
But let's just assume that he does. Maybe that's wrong, but let's just assume that he does. Here's my question about the UF program. What's fundamentally wrong there? And what I mean from that is this is the second coach that's gone there and seems to have this like they're competitive when they start, and something culturally something shifts drastically, and it feels like the coach, not that they go down without a fight, but it feels like if you know the crap that I had to sit through, you would understand why things look the way that they do, and you would
Mhm.
understand. So I want to ask you that, and I want to just kind of compare it to, or just bring another narrative into this question. This was the criticism of Texas, is that their boosters had way too much say, and the athletic department, let's call him the president. Well, he ended up being, not the first president, he was the first prisoner. It felt like he was prisoner to everyone that was around him. And something culturally and program had to shift there in order for Sarkisian to go there and be successful.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's the case. I want to hear what your thoughts are,
Mhm.
but that's a program that has been in the we've hired multiple coaches and something is fundamentally wrong here. And I feel like Florida is in that territory of something more than the head coach
Mhm.
is wrong here. That's my take. What's your analysis or diagnosis of the Florida program?
So I don't think it's similar to Texas in the fact of I don't think their problems are directly correlated to boosters interfering and boosters meddling.
Mm-hmm.
I think their issue, and it started with Dan Mullen, who he won on the field. Like,
Yeah.
for all the crud that he got for not being a good recruiter, and he wasn't, he didn't prioritize it like he should have. But the dude won games. He won a heck of a lot more than Billy Napier. I think they fired him and he was 34-15. And I don't even know if Billy Napier's won 15 games in his tenure, which is a
Yeah.
doggone stat if you want to hear a doggone stat. But I think the problem started then because you think about it. Dan Mullen still won at Florida. Before him was Jim McElwain. Jim McElwain took Florida to 2 SEC championships. Before the shark picture came out. But
Yeah.
he like
Sorry,
yeah,
I missed that when you said it. I was like, shark picture.
I was waiting for a bigger reaction. That's why
Yeah,
I kind
I'm
of
sorry.
paused there.
I've gotten to the point where I'll leave it at that. I was about to make another comment. Let's keep rolling. Continue.
Okay, we'll keep going. But like Jim McElwain won. So it's not like Florida hadn't been to a championship level in the past like 15 years. Now, are they what they were under Urban Meyer? No. The only blip on that radar that they were even close was like 2012 when Will Muschamp was the head coach and they had Jeff Driscoll and they played Teddy Bridgewater and Louisville in the Sugar Bowl. That was like the last great Florida team, but Dan Mullen had them competing. But I think what happened under him was that they kind of their talent dipped overall because, again, he wasn't recruiting like he should have been. Billy comes in, and Billy doesn't, he nabbed DJ Lagway, but they didn't just clean up in recruiting, not like they should with the brand that they have, with the NIL money that they have at their disposal, and the brand of like Florida is a top brand, top 10, top 15 brand in college football. There's no excuse for the product you're seeing on the field right at this moment. So Billy comes in, and to me, he's just not the level of recruiter that he needs to be at this level. And he hasn't really utilized the portal to the degree that he should have. Honestly, he lost people in the Florida or in the portal that could have helped him this year, like a Trevor Etienne, like a Chris McClellan that went to Mizzou, like the Prince guy that went to Ole Miss. Like those are three guys that started last year for you, and that could have been key contributors for your team. So you had the talent issue, but then also he hasn't established a culture there. And it's clear from how they play It's clear from the procedural penalties that they get. They don't play sound, fundamental, smart football. I mean, sometimes they'll make a play and you're just like, what in the world are you thinking? I mean, equivalent to when they played LSU in that fog game and the dude had him stopped on a fourth down and chucked the shoe like a boomerang and gave LSU a win. Like, that type of stuff happens too much for Florida. And I think part of it, a lot of it's coaching, a lot of it's like a talent. I think it's everything. I don't think it's just one singular issue. I also just don't think Billy was ready for this. And I thought he did a great job at Louisiana, but simply put, it doesn't look like he's cut out for it at the SEC level at this point in time.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I think that. Yeah, I think that I would still, and I could be wrong here. I think there's something at the program level. I agree with your take on the recruiting it was in the barrel whenever he got there.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that college football has changed more since Billy Napier's been there than any of the coaches before. I understand he's up against a unique challenge that you're already behind the 8 ball, and then this NIL, all that kind of stuff happens. I think what you're going to see, and this is an interesting take, I think what you're going to see is a lot of these head coaches. This is my question, and we're kind of talking around this, but this is just a big conversation. We could talk about hot seat. I've got a name, but what I want to talk about is who you're going to replace them with. And I feel like what you're looking for in a head coach, and again, I think Napier's gone, but this is where I want to go to. What you're looking for in a head coach is completely different than what you've looked for in the past. Maybe not completely different, but you're looking for
it's different. Yeah.
You're not looking for, that's what I think is intriguing, is that, like, are you looking for, of course you're looking for somebody who knows football, but are you looking for that offensive coordinator at Alabama or Ole Miss or something like that they had a good season, they put up good numbers? Is that who you're looking for?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you looking for more of a guy like, let's go Summerall from Troy, who's like, hey, he seems to be a leader. He lets his coaches coach, and guys want to follow him. And he's going to work the portal, and he's not going to be as X's and O's heavy, but he's more of a motivator. And I don't know if that's the best example, but what I'm trying to elevate is, if you are Florida, who you're going to go get that's going to come in and run this program, but might not be the guy who's going to call plays or be as heavily involved in the X's and O's. And I just want to say, it feels like college football, what you're looking for in a coach, has shifted. And I'd say significantly, not an overreaction significantly. There's just a lot more leadership rather than, hey, if you just have your laminated paper with your Sharpie marker over there, calling plays into the quarterback. I don't know if that's who's the highest guy on my list right now. Even though he can coach ball, I need somebody who's more relational, that can keep players, recruit holes. And to kind of give me your reaction, because I don't really know if I've got the best language for how I'm feeling, but I feel like I'm onto something. Give me your reaction to that.
And I agree. I agree with you. And I think part of the problem that I didn't mention too, Billy Napier is calling plays for Florida. And simply put, I don't think he's a great play caller. And that goes to your point of, you need a coach that can oversee, that can manage all the aspects that come with helming a traditional blue blood program like a Florida. And the ones that can call plays, I can count on my hand. Okay. Lane Kiffin, Steve Sarkisian, Kalen DeBoer, maybe at times, Josh Heupel, maybe at times. Other than that, it really doesn't happen because, again, like you said, there is so much else that you've got to concentrate and focus on. And I think he's just simply not good. He needs to give that over to somebody else and let him devote his time and his resources elsewhere to, again, helping build and helping establish that culture. And I'm going to answer your question about who I think they should go after.
Can I add one point just for you? I was sitting here thinking, and I was like, I can't help but to mention this, even though I think you'll disagree with this. I think that what we're saying right now, I think what is dumbfounding is that Dabo is not better at this. I think Dabo, and again, you can criticize how he's run his program. Again, he has not figured out the transfer portal, and something's got to change there.
Yes.
But he's the kind of guy that I'm thinking, hey, that's who you want to hire, that's friendly. You want him in front of parents. You want him in front of recruits. You want him to be the face of your program. But he won't recruit. You got to do something with the transfer portal. But he's the kind of guy that I'm thinking he is the leader. He's the guy you want as the CEO. And I know that there's some holes in what I'm saying, but I think what I'm just saying is that he more of like, if you were to take his skill set of being a leader, he feels more like a CEO. That's what I'm trying to hire, I think, going into the future, more so than an offensive coordinator who's done well at a shore level to then give them a chance. That's kind of where I'm going with that. I think that it's surprising that he has not fixed this, because it feels like this is the kind of setup he should be taking strides in.
Well, I think that's a great point, because Dabo has a lot of flaws, but one flaw that he does not have, he lets his coaches coach,
Totally,
like you said. And I think that is very, very important in today's age of college football, because, again, like you said, you have a lot at your disposal that you have to take care of. And when you're game planning and all that, it takes time away from that. And I think another thing that they've got to do whenever they do fire him, and again, miracles happen every day. He may salvage his job. But I think you and I both think that he'll be fired, and if he does, we'll have a whole show breaking down who they could get. But one thing they cannot do, especially after this time around, you can't hire a first-time head coach or a coach that hasn't coached at this level. I don't think you can do that this time around. You've got to get a proven guy that you know can win in the SEC or that is one of the Big Ten. And that is why I think, and before we kind of dive more into this, I do want to give a shout out to our good friend, Mickey Lane, who wanted us to have this conversation about the hot seat and a few coaches that are on it. I think they need to hire Lane Kiffin. And I think Lane Kiffin would thrive at Florida. Yeah. And I know there was a little bit of a debate. Would he leave? I think he would leave Ole Miss for Florida in a heartbeat. Not only because it's a better program, he's got more NIL money. He'd have more NIL money. He'd have a better recruiting hotbed in the state of Florida.
Yeah, man.
And I want everybody to think about this too. This Ole Miss team is the best chance he has at winning a championship. Most of those guys are gone after this year. What does Florida have? They've got DJ Lagway coming back. Okay? Yeah. That's the guy that he sees his tools and he's like, I can build around this guy. And I think he'd kill it in the portal. Guys would want to come play for him, especially on offense. And doesn't he give you a little bit of Steve Spurrier vibes? That eclectic, bombastic personality that's going to take jabs at other coaches, that's going to take jabs at the media. That's Lane, and that has worked at Florida before, offensive mastermind. I think that marriage would be fantastic. We can talk about other guys at another time, and again, and pontificate all we want. But I just want to say off the bat, I think Lane Kiffin should be the number one target on their board.
I like it. What was that word? Pontificate? What was the word that you just used?
Pontificate.
Pontificate. Someone get the dictionary out and see if that's what that means. Dictionary check. So
yes, sir.
Hey, dude, I'll go and then I'll let you finish us. I think 3 is good enough. We could we're getting a little too speculative. I think if we give more than 3.
Agreed.
Here it is, guys. I call this a hot seat's a good way to say this. I don't think that this is it's correct to call this a firing. I think that his contract runs out. It's Dave Aranda at Baylor. He's had his time. He's had ample opportunity. I liked what I saw last night. Barely. I mean, just being honest, it's like, hey, why is this a close game? And first, why are we playing Air Force? Like, everyone knows you stay away from any scent of the triple option when it comes to out of conference games. Yeah. And what did we do? Went knocking on our door after they beat us in a bowl game. So, and I think what's interesting is that another guy who's a little bit more reserved, him and Napier, kind of similar just in demeanor, possibly. Yeah. And, man, I think that he was that name whenever he was getting hired that no one thought was on the list. And Baylor, and just the, dead of night, recruited him, got him there. Everyone at LSU was thinking, oh my gosh, this is actually who, is next. Him and Ogeron don't have a great relationship.
They did not like each other.
They
No.
did not. And it makes sense why they don't if you've watched any of Dave Aranda's stuff. But I mean, simply, man, he's just, and again, I think that, we're left with this question, who do you go get? But I think that we're honestly at the point where it's like, hey, Baylor's kind of shown they're willing to spend some money, but there's just something not happening. And I would probably, if I had to sum it up, I think in just kind of the circles I run in, there's just this disconnect between the head coach and the players. I think you kind of see it, and I think I've seen some of it come on, of him trying to build this kind of come into this personality, and I think it's just too little too late. I do believe there's a path forward for him, but I think he's a great defense coordinator in the NFL next. I think that college football just demands a lot of a head coach. He's the only head coach in FBS football, the only head coach that's calling defensive plays. That's a unique guy. And it's all good if you're winning games. But if you're not at the top echelon and you have a kind of a statistic like that, that's not a good sign. So
agreed.
I do feel like he's a great fit at Baylor, but it simply comes down to if you're not winning football games, we'll go find somebody else who can lose it for us. So that's mine. I don't think that's too much of he'll finish the season, I bet. But I would imagine we barely make a bowl game, and I don't see them renewing his contract. So, Hampton, who do you kind of got? Who are some hot seats for you?
So interesting that you mentioned Dave Aranda, because I don't know if you remember this, but when the Florida job came open, we mentioned Dave Aranda because Baylor was coming off that 2021 year where they were incredible, had the year of the century, honestly, for Baylor, other than some RG3 years or Bryce Petty in like 2014. Yeah. I mean, we were all like, if I were Florida, I would hire Dave Aranda. They might have just been out of luck if they hired Aranda and Napier. Because I agree, they're very much similar in their demeanor. And Aranda always just looks very standoffish. So I get that note about him connecting with his players. I could totally see. The two that I have,
and let me just say, I'm sorry, just for Aranda, and as we talk about whether it's coaches or players, I am never asking someone to be someone that they're not.
Agreed.
You know what I'm saying? Like that.
You got to be yourself, comfortable in your skin.
Yeah, and that's just it's worth saying that in these hot seat conversations. I'm not asking you to be someone that you're not. Be exactly who you are, but you've got to figure out what your strengths are. A lot of times you have to realize what's your weaknesses. Good leaders are very aware of their weaknesses, and people feel like they also have people around them that I think can easily give them feedback, and they're really good at receiving feedback. Those are great leaders that are not scared. They desperately want feedback. Yeah. And I think that he's just not stepped into that weakness and tried to find ways and tried to find moments where and again, we don't see everything, but that's kind of what I've heard. And so again, not asking him to be anything that he's not, but how are you making up for that? Even though you're not maybe the Spurrier, that's going to, have everybody, watching everything that he says. Press conferences are going to be fun. You're never going to get that. And we don't want that, but be who you are, So go ahead with your hot seat.
Yeah, I'll try to be quick with it. I know a lot of people want to say it. I'm not going to say hot seat. I'm just going to say capital P pressure. Mike Norvell. They're 0-3. They lost another game. They lost to Memphis, where he used to coach at home.
So sad.
I saw where they were like the first team that had only lost one game the year prior to go 0-3 the following year since like 1978. I believe that was the stat I saw. It's just not good enough right now. The talent on that roster is so inferior to what it was last year. And he is going to have to hit a big reset button in the offseason. And the issue with that is it's going to take a year or two or maybe even 3 for it to show up on the field. So I think that's the guy that we need to be analyzing, because it makes you wonder with a season like this, where the past two, the exception to the rule, and then the other few that he's had, are those just the norm for him? So I would say him. And then the other guy, it pains me to say, and I wouldn't say hot seat. I would say capital P pressure, Neil Brown at West Virginia. They're up 34-24 in the fourth quarter in the backyard brawl, a rivalry game, and you lose. And they're 1-2 right now. You get embarrassed by Penn State. And again, we gave you grace with that because we understood Penn State's got more dudes than you do. But Bowling Green put up a better fight against Penn State than West Virginia did. That doesn't look great. And then now you got your whole Big 12 schedule in front of you. So that's the guy that I'm looking up at Morgantown. And you and I both love Neil Brown.
Yeah.
All of our friends, all God's children love Neil Brown. But other than West Virginia fans right now.
That's true.
But there's got to be – we got to keep going up. We can't go 9-4 and then slide back down to like a 7-5. That can't happen this year. And so I'm interested to see how they respond from here because I could see them kind of itching to make a change if the season doesn't really get turned around. And before this last word I have to say, I do want to give a shout-out to Pitt. That was a great game yesterday. And, man, shout-out Eli Holstein, former Alabama quarterback. He played fantastic yesterday. That was the guy that I was anticipating seeing when I watched his high school film. I thought he, with his legs, with his arm, he came up clutch in that game. I was very proud of him and the effort he put forth. And that game, to me, always delivers. It should be played every year. It's one of the great underrated rivalries in college football.
I think that's a great point. It's been fun to see some of those, even that they're playing those as non-conference games, which I think it's so good for college football. Good for college football. This is how we'll end the episode. I feel like Neil Brown. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me say this again. I feel like Kirk Cousins is like, I had this in my head. He's the Neil. Hold on a second. Yeah, Neil Brown is the Kirk Cousins
of head college football.
That's what I'm trying to say. Yes, he does this good enough, just good enough to he just got a contract extension. I think a lot of people were saying, "Well, for what?" Like, hold on one second. It's not terrible, but that's. And so now they're in this position where it's just again he's the Kirk Cousins where it's like he might mess around and make a lot of money, but he'll maybe you can contrast him to some of these other head coaches that have been fired where they're not working at all. Yeah. But I think, West Virginia's put themselves in a weird position. And same with FSU. Jimmy Sexton, the manager for all these head coaches. Hey, kudos, my man. I mean,
he got his work cut out for him like he does each and every offseason.
Yeah, but I mean, he got that dude a raise. He got Norvell a raise. But I just don't want to miss this before we move on. Hampton, you did want Norvell as the Alabama head coach. And so how do you feel? The people want to know. They want an answer.
The people want answers.
Enough.
They want accountability.
You grew up in all of a sudden I asked that question and you turned it into, I grew up in both of my parents were, my dad worked extremely hard to provide for my family. You kicked them.
No comment other than I want the record to show September 15th at 6:57 p.m. I never, ever wanted Mike Norvell. And that will be my closing comment for the night.
I like it. We'll end it on that. I'm sure there'll be let's get some comments in the chat, as they say on some of these live streams.
Yes, please do. We'd love to hear from you.
Well, guys, hey, again, thank you for watching us as always. We do this for fun. And like I always say, Hampton and I would be having this conversation even if it wasn't on camera and over microphones. We would call each other and talk about college football. So if that's you with your friends, I hope that you have enjoyed this, that you find this kind of feels like home, maybe feels like your friend group. That's what we're shooting for. And again, we would do this if it was just for fun. So it is fun, and that's why we do it. You like that? So again, if you haven't subscribed to us or followed us on some of our social medias, we'd love for you to do that just to keep up with us. And we'd love to be one of the things that's in your rotations that you love to listen to, whether you're going to work or in the shower or you're in the car. So again, hey, the Pigskin Cafe for week 3 of college football is going to be closed for now. But until next week, you can chew on that. We got a lot to look forward to. See y'all soon.